from Janet Camarena, our Director of Transparency Initiatives at Foundation Center, who will show us how Foundation Maps can be used to identify potential funding partners and peer connections, and even help you with your proposal application. So with that, I'll let Janet take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for an introduction to how Foundation Maps can be used as a tool to support your development and prospects efforts. As Erin explained, I focus on transparency initiatives inside Foundation Center, and specifically I lead something called our Glasspockets initiative. Glasspockets serves to champion greater Foundation transparency. What and hows of opening up foundations, I encourage you to visit www.glasspockets.org. Professionally, my background is actually as a librarian, which means I search databases like Foundation Maps just for the fun of it. And I'm using the word fun intentionally here because I have to say Foundation Maps is one of the most fun databases I've played around with in a long time. So I hope one of my goals for this session is simply that by the end of it, you'll just want to have fun exploring it yourself. Just on, in terms of exploration, according to our Glasspockets research, fewer than 10% of all foundations even have a website or web presence of any kind. So databases like Foundation Maps can really serve to uncover new data about new prospects. And that's what our focus today will be, really helping you see what's unseen. Though Foundation Maps is a subscription-based platform, like our other subscription databases, we make it freely available at more than 450 funding information network sites nationally, as well as in several countries. These funding information network partners are libraries, nonprofit resource centers, and other publicly accessible sites where you can freely use our tools. To find a funding information network site near you, just visit the Find Us page that you're seeing on the screen here. And you can get to this page by either going to grantspace.org, which is our portal specifically for grant seekers, or from our main foundationcenter.org page, you would click on locations. And then you can get to this interactive map where you can type in your location, and it will show you the funding information network site near you where you can access maps. You can also learn more about subscribing or accessing free trial access from our Maps page at maps.foundationcenter.org. I encourage you all to sign up for a free trial following the program so you can experiment with some of what you learn here today. I should also mention that all of the examples and the demos I'll be doing today feature the Foundation Maps professional level version, and that is the version that you can get a free trial to or access via our libraries. Before we dive into the search examples, I'm going to show you how you can quickly use Foundation Maps to explore the funding landscape in broad and very specific terms, and just kind of give you the lay of the land and how the map is organized. When you open up Maps, this is the screen that greets you. So you see that the default view is global, and the red dots that you're seeing represent grant recipients. So the larger the bubbles, the more grant dollars are in that particular region. And the recipient bubbles are tied to the recipient address of the organization. But there are other settings, and I'll get to those momentarily. But first, I also want to draw your attention to these boxes across the top of the screen. They're consistent in all of the maps. And these are helpful data points to give you a sense of how many grants there are. So you'll see we have 3.6 million plus total grants in the database. It also tells you their value and how many collective funders and recipients. So collectively, we have over $250 billion in grants spread across 367,000 plus recipients, awarded by a universe of more than 37,000 funders. In terms of timeline, the scope of this grants data is between 2006 all the way to 2016 into the future, as some funders actually electronically report their data directly to us. So in the case of multi-year investments, we already have some 2016 data in there for those e-reported grants. And currently, more than 1,000 foundations electronically report their data directly to us, really increasing the currency of the database. though the default view in Maps is a recipient view, note that there is a drop-down menu in the upper left-hand corner that actually allows you to manipulate the view. I'm going to go to our live demo now and show you this. So when I drop down this menu, I can set it to Foundations, which changes the bubbles to blue. And those blue bubbles now represent foundations. And you're seeing the density of foundations globally. And when you set the map to the final option, Area Served, you'll see that momentarily we'll get green shading. And this represents the areas that the grant is intended to serve, because as we all know, a recipient organization can be in BC but serve nonprofit NGOs around the world. And so this setting allows you to view where the dollars are actually benefiting. And we'll dig into this a little bit more as we go on in the case studies that you'll be seeing. But I just wanted to point out that structure. I'm going to go back to the recipient view. And so beyond those settings, the other way to manipulate the map, that's the most logical way to begin, is to drill down geographically. So to change the default view from global to a specific country or city, you just need to start typing the name of the country in the location box. So just as an example, I'll start typing United States, and it pops right up. And notice how the screen changes when we set it to the U.S. Note that the data points all change along with it, so you can quickly see some aggregate totals in the database for U.S. grant making. You can also drill down further by city. So I'm actually based in our San Francisco office, so I'm going to start there. And we'll start typing San Francisco. And this is where the drop-down menu is really important, because there are San Franciscos globally all over the globe. So make sure you pick the right one. And you'll see that, again, the data points quickly change, as does the map. And so at the city level, we have over 84,000 grants awarded to about 2,975 recipients, totaling more than $7.5 billion across a universe of 3,800 plus funders. You can also always use the zoom in feature and then the arrows on your keyboard to zoom in, and we'll play around with that in a little bit. But first, I'm going to draw your attention to our first case study. So this research example, I'm interested in securing funding for programs aimed at enrichment programs for K-12 students in San Francisco. In particular, we're focusing on serving the needs of low-income and high-risk kids, and I'm interested in seeing what kinds of projects have been supported in the last 3 to 4 years. So let me go back to Maps. And so we've got San Francisco part in there already, but now we need to add in the K-12, so the subject headings. And there's a few different ways to access subject. You could simply start typing education, and it pops up from the menu. Or if you're not familiar with our controlled vocabulary, you can click on Browse All Subjects and then pick from the menu. And notice as you pick education, for instance, it pops up these arrows on the far right, and that indicates that there's the first layer of taxonomy, then it reveals a second level taxonomy. And here's elementary and secondary education, which would cover K-12, so that's probably what we want to pick. But notice there's a further arrow, and that means in this case there's actually a third level taxonomy. So if I'm actually a development person in K-12, I would make note of this third level taxonomy, and just make note, oh, if I'm doing early childhood or just want to focus on elementary education, I could do that as part of a future search. However, typically when I'm doing research, prospect research, I will cast the widest net possible initially to make sure I don't falsely eliminate some good prospects, and also just to see what kind of pool I have to work with before I start refining it further. So I'm going to go ahead and select elementary and secondary education, and then just click away. And you can save searches, by the way, but we'll focus on that later. But for now, notice what this did to our search. We have a total of now 4,000 grants, $262 million spread across a universe of 486 funders and 334 recipients. But there's other elements, and we have a good pool. We don't want to look at all these 4,000 grants. We want to refine these some way. And in our case study, there were some other elements, right? We were focusing on specific population groups, low-income and high-risk kids. And we were interested in seeing grants awarded fairly recently, in the last 4 to 5 years. So if we go to more filters, or also advanced search gets you here too, this allows you to refine your search further, and you have population served options as well as support strategy and transaction type, which I'll show you momentarily, and also grant years and even grant amounts and keyword options. So for this example, we're interested in population groups, so let's bring up that menu. And notice we have age groups, ethnic groups, family relationships, etc. And what we're looking for is social and economic status. And we were interested in low-income kids, so we'll check the economically disadvantaged people box. And notice there's also an at-risk youth box. So I'm going to pick both of those. And then if we click on the more filters box, this goes away. And notice this now reduces it to 1,200 grants. So, but we're not done. Remember, we also didn't want to look all the way back 10 years to 2006. So we'll go back to more filters, and we will start to refine for grants since 2011. By just checking the boxes in which you're interested. And then click on more filters to go away. And now we're down to a little under 500 grants awarded by 106 funders to 81 recipients. From here, you usually want to start analyzing who these funders are and starting to mine for potential prospects. So instead of going to map view, notice on the left-hand side of the screen, you have all these different options. We're going to start with list. And it's right now arranging it by the dollar value of the grants, and it's sorting it by foundations. But note that there's different tabs here. We can sort by recipients, and we can also sort by individual grants. And an interesting way to sort the grants when you're looking at them is you can reverse sort by year by clicking on year twice, and then it brings up the most recent grants first if you want to look at the very most current grants we have in our database that satisfy all this criteria. And for any of these that interest you, you can click on the little details button, and it pops up some information about the grant. In this case, it was for middle school. This came up because it was targeting the population group we indicated. It was a pilot program to improve recruitment, training, and support for instructional teaching fellows. And so all of these tables are structured in this fashion. There's details for every line. And we'll go back to foundations. Usually for prospect researchers, that's where you want to start to see which funders you're seeing on these lists that may not be known to you, or at least not known in these contexts. And besides dollar value of grants, a way I find particularly handy to sort the data is by number of grants, because as you saw in the dollar value, sometimes even though there might be a high amount of dollars flowing from a particular foundation to the issue, it might be spread over just one or two recipients. And that, to me, signals that there might not be a big opportunity because they're working very strategically with a couple of organizations. So by formatting the data to display by number of grants, you actually see who is making a high number of grants to a lot of different organizations where there might be more opportunity to build a relationship. So from here, you can start digging into the data. and start looking at these lists. But one other interesting way that you can structure it, because we are thinking about geographic things, being that this is a map, you can also sort by state. And I tend to like to sort, because I'm in California, near the top of the alphabet, in reverse order by state. So I can see some of the out-of-state voters, again, emphasizing the seeing what's unseen and seeing the philanthropy that you might not otherwise be aware of. What out-of-state grant makers are making grants in the areas in which you're working? So from here you see some clusters, such as from the Community Foundation of Texas, the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation has made a few. So any of these that interest you, you can click on the details, and then it takes you to the grants. It looks like they've specifically been working with the KIPP Foundation, and you can pop up their profile if the Dell Foundation, because you're in California and you were not familiar with it. We have a full profile here that you can review to assess whether it's appropriate for you, and then a link to the website where you can learn more. And I'm going to go ahead and resort it back by number of grants. And from here, now that we're back to looking at mostly grants kind of in your own backyard, you might start again looking for ones you don't recognize, like State Street Foundation, or maybe somebody had mentioned the Stewart Foundation as a possibility to you. So in addition to looking at the details, you see there's these flow chart details along the side. So the next thing I'm going to point out is the pathways, and that's what these little flowchart icons symbolize. So just like I showed you before, the detail view pops up the list of the grants that they've made in this area. And what Pathways adds is a 6 degrees of separation kind of view of those grants that they've made. Starting with Stewart Foundation as the starting point, then you'll see the 3 grantee partners they have in this subject area. And then you also get to see who is funding those organizations and then who those organizations are funding. And a really cool aspect of this pathway, say the partners in school innovation sound similar to what you're doing, you can change the view by double-clicking, and then the pathway starts with partners in school innovation. So now you're seeing their funders and who else they're funding and who else is funding those. So it's almost like a nesting doll where, again, you get to see these unseen potential connections. So from this list, you might decide, I'm not familiar with the James and Rebecca Morgan Family Foundation. I'm going to click on them and learn a little bit more. So we double-click, and it brings up these tabs where you can learn about the foundation, their recipients, and the grants that they're making in this program area. And if we click on foundation, we can get to their full profile where you learn that they do fund in education at all levels. And you can, for instance, click to subjects, and all of the foundation profiles have this. We call this pinwheel display internally kind of a windrose. And it's a great way to assess their priorities quickly. You can drill down by clicking on education, and then it resorts it to show you what it is they're funding in education specifically. So equal opportunity, education services, educational management. So we know that when you're trying to assess whether a prospect is appropriate, besides knowing that they broadly fund education, really getting more detail about the way they intersect with a broad category like education can be really helpful to you. So keep that in mind when you're assessing these. So I'm going to close out of this. And now we're going to go back to the map. And this might be a search you want to come back to later because there's a lot to dig into. Oh, actually, let me delete Stewart because we were looking at Stewart. So this list of 470 might be one that takes you a while to get through, so you can always save this search by clicking on the pin and giving it a name. And you may also decide that now that you've saved these 470, that's a lot of funders, so you want to drill down further, and there were some more filters we had not explored. And some of them were support strategy and transaction type. So support strategy describes what kind of support do you want? General support, which of course is every nonprofit's favorite kind of support because you get to decide discretionarily how you're going to allocate those dollars yourself. So we'll use that as an example. And then in transaction type, what we have is basically how the funds are classified. Is it a cash grant? Are you looking for in-kind or matching or pro bono services? So just keep that in mind, that that's another way to slice the database. Then we click on the more filters, and now we've reduced the universe of 470 potential funders, or not funders, grants to 100 grants, and just 37 total funders. So that is a more manageable list. But keep in mind that you don't want to start with this list, but this could be your sweet spot, but just be aware that it really eliminated a lot of possibility. And that's because, unfortunately, not all funders include the data in their grant descriptions about what the support strategy or transaction type were. So in the absence of that, if you use that as a search term, those that don't include that data will be eliminated. So I never suggest starting with this when you're prospect researching, but it can be a way to supplement it once you've scanned the larger universe of funders. So, let's see. So that is kind of an extensive look at different ways you can use maps to drill into this first example. And now we're going to go to our second prospect research example. My board doesn't believe me when I tell them that foundation funding is harder to come by for my arts organization. They think that because the economy is doing so well here in New York, that it should be easier than ever for me to write proposals and secure support. I'd like some data to see if our experience is part of a larger trend so I can motivate them to help me make connections within their networks. Can maps help me look at funding flows to the arts over time? Why, yes, it can. So we're going to clear this search. And again, this was focused geographic on an organization in New York, New York. So we'll start typing New York City, New York. And there we go. And we're interested in the arts. So we'll just start typing arts, and there's arts and culture. And so MAPS is doing its thing. You can do what we just did with the education example and drill down, but what we really want here is some trend data. And what MAPS provides is this handy chart option here that I'm going to click on. And it organizes all the grant data we have into trends going back from 2016. And you can see that arts peaked right before the recession and then declined like a lot of program areas did, then started to recover. But now it's started to go down again. And you'll see this trend continues both in dollar value and total number of grants. And so, as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So this might be very helpful to take to your next board meeting if you feel like your board isn't motivated to help you mine your personal networks. This might be a way to motivate them. However, I do want to caution you that this dotted line that it looks like it's really falling off a cliff, take that with a grain of salt. As you'll see, it says the data is incomplete. We simply don't have complete grants data sets yet, so we can't really effectively forecast. So really don't use that as the basis for any analysis. And I also want to caution you that because MAPS is not structured as a formal research set, it should really be used for your own internal trend analysis and not for publication, since sometimes some funders are behind in reporting grants, and that can create a misleading trend line. So if you really want to cite something publicly, we suggest you visit our data.foundationcenter.org site that uses our research set to give national trend data. But that is an example of how quickly you can generate some charts and get some quick trend analysis to use for internal purposes. We call that quick and dirty research. So another thing you'll be seeing along the left here is constellations. So our next case study will allow us to showcase that. I've been in development a long time, but recently transitioned from working in the academic world in the Midwest to a hospital in Boston, and I feel lost because I don't know the network like I did in my last job. Can maps help me understand how we fit into the funding landscape and what our connection points to others might be? Why, yes, it can. We're going to go back to the map and clear all. And again, this case study takes us to Boston. And we have hospitals as a subject. There we go, health, inpatient care, hospital care. And so there we have our map that we could drill down into. We could also do charts like we just did and pick a funder to do a pathway. But for this particular search where you really want to get a better sense of the ecosystem, I'm going to show you constellations. It's one of my favorite things about maps. It's really both beautiful to look at, but also can be really super informative and help you see philanthropy in a new way, and continues our theme of seeing philanthropy, often that is unseen. This gives you instructions, so when you do play with it, if you give a trial or go to the library, just remember this is here as a help prompt. And so here, this is mapping our constellation or ecosystem of grants in Boston to hospital care. And what you're seeing here is similar to like what we were seeing in the broader maps. The blue bubbles represent the funders, and the red bubbles represent the recipient organizations. The larger the bubble, the more funding is related to that institution. And constellations basically allows you to see the map of your network, so you can see what the connection points are and better understand how your organization connects to others. So you'll see here that Massachusetts General is the largest bubble, so they're very central to the network in this parlance. And in fact, if we open up the tabular view, you'll see that it's telling you they're very central, and when you click on it, it isolates them in the network. And similarly, let's say you're with the Children's Hospital, so you can view the Children's Hospital. You're also very central with 36 connections. And one way I like to also use constellations is once I know where my bubble is, Children's Hospital, I can move the bubble and it rearranges the map so I can see who I'm connected to a little more easily. And especially if you mouse over it, you'll see some of the lines pointing both to your funders. And you can also say, gee, I wonder if we share funders with Brigham Women's Hospital, because we have some connection points where we're doing prenatal care or serving mothers, and there might be a partnership we can do with them. So by bringing both over, you can quickly see which donors you share. There are a few that you share, but what should be exciting to you about this is that there's a lot of donors that you don't share. So there's an opportunity now for somebody, in this case a development officer that's new to Boston, to introduce yourself to the development person at the Women's Hospital and demonstrate how you've done your homework, you share these funders, and maybe trade some introductions so that you can say, I'll introduce you to donor X, Y, and Z, say the Bartholomew Family Foundation in exchange for this one, the Harris Family Foundation. And it just allows you to be more aware of potential prospects that you both bring to the table. The other way that I also like to use constellations is often there are funders who are making exploratory grants or pilot grants or they're pre-initiative and just testing the waters. And you'll see that there are outliers, and you don't know why there are outliers, but it's good to surface those to see if maybe there's an opportunity. Because you'll see City Foundation, for instance, isn't connected to anybody else but the Women's Hospital. So there might be an opportunity there, and that gives you an opportunity to go to City Foundation and view their record or recipient or grants, just like we saw with the other donors, and then see if that's one you want to put on your prospect list to try and work your network or trade an introduction to. And along the lines of trading introductions, this example was based in the case of somebody who's new in town. And I should mention that when you're in tabular view, in addition to being able to view the organization name, you can also view the networks, which is super helpful to just isolating the list of prospects because it's hard to actually pinpoint all the bubble names. So let's say you do want to do this partnership with the Brigham and Women's Hospital. You learn their network G. You just pop over to the network tab and pick network G details, and then that's their full list of donors pop up. And I should mention at this point you likely want to start exporting data, or exporting or printing out maps. There's PDF icons when you can export, so you can do that. And similarly, when you are looking at lists, you can also go to details and cut and paste and export the data as well that way. So I'm going to close out of this. And as I was saying, in this example, we were focused on somebody who's new in town and using constellations that way. Another strategic way to use maps, I'm going to clear this right now, is if you're not new in town but already have some colleagues or a lunch group or an informal networking group that is your field. Maybe you have a network of children's organizations, and I'm just going to pick San Francisco Charities because I know them well. So you can pick 3 or 4 agencies that are already in your sphere of influence and see what donors you share because you already are friendly with them, and sort out potential introduction trades as well. So you can either go to more filters or enter organization name. Either works, and we're going to do Edgewood. I'm going to do some children's charities. Edgewood Center for Children and Families is my first, and that's them. And then Homeless Prenatal Program is the other that is in my group. And then Huckleberry Youth Program. So now we have 3 children's organizations mapped. And notice how we get a really nice spoke and wheel view that allows you to see which donors you share, but also which donors you don't share. So if these are folks that you know and are already networking with, again, you can structure some handy trades by looking into the tabular data and then mapping the network by cluster and looking at the homeless prenatal donors, the Edgewood donors, and Huckleberry donors, and picking a few that you want to trade introductions to. So that is a couple of ways to think about using constellations for a prospecting tool. But I should also mention MAPS is a very new tool, about a year old, and we're always looking for feedback from audiences about how they find to use the tool. So at the end of the webinar, you'll see we have an email address, maps@foundationcenter.org. Send us your feedback and your use cases. We're really interested in hearing, and we've already iterated the database as well based on user input and feedback. So we do welcome your experience as we're continuing to improve it. I know some of you are globally focused. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this search and go back to our map and bring up our next use example, which is we're based in DC, but primarily serve NGOs in different parts of the world. Currently, we have a project focused on providing support for women in India. Can maps show me funders who support specific service areas rather than just mapping where the foundation or recipients are based? And why, yes, it can. And remember at the beginning, I mentioned that we have an area served bubble. So we'll change to that. And that allows us to sort the map by where the grants are benefiting, regardless of the recipient address. Because remember, when they're set to recipient, it's set to just show us which organization address the check was sent to, not where it benefited. So I'm going to start typing India. And notice this says we have 5,330 grants tied to recipients who have addresses in India. But if we change that to area served, note that it dramatically grows to more than 7,700 funders, because it's also picking up all the non-Indian-based organizations that are serving India. And the default view is country. You can also set it by city if you want to drill down by city. And remember, the subject focus here was, not subject focus, there was a population group focus. This agency was interested in specific population group of women and girls. So we'll go to the more filters and bring up population. And if you look at the first category, the age groups actually includes females and males, so we will check the female box. And note that there is a third level taxonomy if we later want to go there. And then that resorts the data to 1,977 grants awarded to a total of 150 funders. Awarded by a total of 150 funders to 847 recipients. And then from here, we can do what we did before, which is click on the list and start analyzing by grants, recipients, or again, as prospectors, you usually want to see who the funders are. And one interesting thing is that it's not just U.S. grants. Note that we do have a grant from a Netherlands organization. And if we sort by dollar value of grants, notice we're picking up things from globally, like the Oak Foundation in Switzerland and HEVOS in Netherlands. So any of those that are not the usual suspects, you can again click on the grant details. And for instance, we'll take a look at Nirnaya. And this was a grant of $450,000 awarded in 2011 having to do with women's rights. And they provided Nirnaya with core support, enabling it to provide social and economic support to marginalized women in the state of Jharkhand through grant making and building capacities related to livelihoods, leadership, education, health, and combating violence, and to strengthen its national structures and systems to ensure long-term sustainability. So again, from here you can continue analyzing the results, or you can download them. You have PDF and CSV formats here for you to do that, and also drill down to recipients and grants. So that is an example of how you use a geo area served if you're working in the NGO or globally. And speaking of geographic, I have one more example to share with you, and I'm going to bring up the case, and that is I'm working on a proposal for a 3-year project to serve the Fruitvale neighborhood in Oakland, and the funder wants me to include neighborhood demographic data including household income and ethnicity served, and how that population might change over the life of the grant. Does MAPS have this kind of demographic data? Why, yes, it does. And we'll go to the map and clear this search. And we're going to, and this is kind of a unique way if you want to zoom into neighborhood or a block that you serve. And you know when you fill out those proposals now, they often ask for diversity data. So this can be super helpful to uncovering that. So we'll select Oakland, California, and it resorts. And then this is a case where we want to zoom in because we're looking at neighborhood level. So I'm going to just keep hitting the plus sign. Till we get to Fruitvale. And then to do the demographic mapping, we have this polygon shape in the right side of the screen. If you click on the polygon, it allows you to actually plot a boundary or a shape around the neighborhood. So I'm going to start here a little bit south of Fruitvale, and then map the second point a little bit south of San Antonio. Go this way. And then down here. And then once you close it by clicking on where you started, it creates a shape that then processes some demographic data. And sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, but once that lag once it processes it, what it will come back with is these charts, kind of like what we saw with charts, but they're demographic, and they're taken from the census data going back to 1990. So you can actually see the trends over time in terms of population, and then it breaks it down by the categories in the census: white, non-Hispanic, Black, Native American, Asian, Hispanic, and also by income. And you'll see you have the trend lines that show what's increasing and projected to decline. And this actually projects through 2018 because the census data does do that. So if this is a 3-year grant, you're actually able to project into the future of what the percentages will be. So again, I know we're getting close to time, but I want to remind you all, I hope I've whet your appetite to use the tool. If you want to use the tool at a local library near you, go to the Find Us on Grant Space, or sign up for a free trial at maps.foundationcenter.org. And now I will take any questions you have.
Great, thanks, Janet. So one of the questions that came in was, is there somewhere I can view Foundation Center's taxonomy?
Yes. As a matter of fact, let me go back to our demo. I'll open a new window. If you go to taxonomy.foundationcenter.org, it takes you to our classification system, and you can download our taxonomy or explore it here to get to know what our controlled vocabulary consists of. And I should mention it was recently overhauled, again, due to user input. We did an extensive overhaul the last couple of years to really deepen the language that we use for population groups, for example, as well as for new kinds of grants that are being made, such as to STEM. STEM is now a subject heading. So I encourage those of you who are interested in getting to know the taxonomy, or if you're a funder that's looking at how to classify your grants, use this taxonomy.foundationcenter.org. You'll see there's tabs across the top here, so you can drill into the subjects, population, organization type, and transaction type. Other questions?
Great. And if anyone has any more questions, just feel free to type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Another one that came in was, how often is the data in Foundation Maps updated?
Oh, great question. I'm really happy to report that we are able to update Foundation Maps weekly as we get new data. And so that data, again, can come from funders electronically reporting their data to us or sending us updates electronically, as well as from other sources, such as the IRS 990 and news press releases that we receive, et cetera. I think all told, there's more than 35 sources of data we use to show the data, to build the data that we have in the database.
Great. And another question that just came in was, could you please show a sample of the data downloaded after search? Does it include the description of the project funded when you do the export?
Let me try. So go to Maps and let me clear out. And we'll go to San Francisco. And then if we go to List, if we are downloading this data, what you get is, let me just see how long it takes and I'll show you. So what you get is what you're seeing on the screen. And then similarly, if you want to get the detail, then you need to open the record and copy and paste the actual data that's in the record.
Great. One more question. How do you get the, we talked about how we got the data. What's the difference between transaction type and support strategy?
Sure. So let's go look at this. So if we go to support strategy and pull down that menu, you'll see it describes how the grant is structured in terms of how the money is being used. Is it for general operating support, or is it for program development, which is fairly popular, or are you an intermediary that's going to re-grant those dollars? So a way to think about it is it's not a subject, because any subject could be structured in any of these fashions. So there can be general support for arts grants and program support for arts grants, just like for the environment, that it describes how the capital is being used. Transaction type more describes whether it is in fact cash grant, or is it an employee matching gifts or employee-related scholarships, grants to individuals, in-kind gifts, matching gifts. So it describes what kind of funding it is, because not all funding is in the form of cash grants. But again, keep in mind to use those carefully once you've done a deeper dive, or a broader search, I should say, because not every funder tells us the support strategy or transaction type they're using. So those will only come up in the search for those funders that tell us. I think last time I checked, only about 40% of funders give us that data. So you are eliminating over half the grants in the database when you use those, so they should definitely be used supplementarily. Any other questions?
I think that was the last one, Janet.
Great.
And just a reminder to everyone, oh, go ahead.
Well, thanks everybody, and just a reminder that if you have questions as you begin digging in that we didn't address, or you get stuck when you're using it, email us at maps@foundationcenter.org. And Erin, do you have any housekeeping details?
Oh, yep, it was just that our recording is going to be available in the next couple of days, and we'll try to send the link with your with the email that will come to you tomorrow. So if you missed the very beginning, you'll be able to catch it. Great. Well, thanks so much, everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Erin. Bye, everybody.